Mike Tomlin. Oh, the man that is continuing to work miracles game after game this season. Mike Tomlin's supporters have been the ultimate. You are what your record says you are. This is Sports Guy talking that you guys are watching and listening to. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to talk about the Steelers being 7-4 despite playing like a team that is not even close to being a playoff contender in the stacked AFC. Even though the Steelers have one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL, they have still managed to find a way to remain competitive in the AFC. The Steelers have even had to deal with an offensive coordinator getting fired mid-season, as Matt Canada was awful at play calling on offense. Before I say anything else, though, I want to present you guys with a topic question. So, here it is. Can Mike Tomlin take the Steelers to the NFL playoffs this season? I feel really confident that's going to happen. Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and even though the Pittsburgh Steelers have not gotten quality play from their quarterback position, it doesn't matter because they got two good receivers in Deontay Johnson and George Pickett. They got two good running backs in Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. The Pittsburgh Steelers need to be a physical team at the line of scrimmage. Well, Mike Tomlin has done a great job understanding that, and they've been physical at the line of scrimmage. That's why they can run the football pretty well, even though their play caller, Matt Canada, has been awful for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Now they got an interim offensive coordinator, and it seems like they turned around their offense because they got over 400 yards of total offense yesterday against the Cincinnati Bengals, which was basically a foreign concept to the Pittsburgh Steelers since they hadn't done that at all in the Matt Canada era. It was crazy how much Matt Canada was holding back Pittsburgh Steelers in previous games because of the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers had all that talent and they couldn't get 400 yards of offense in the modern NFL, where the rule book is literally geared towards favoring offenses to move the football down the field and score points. When you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've been winning football games because of their old school style of football. They've been able to run it and play great defense and win games at the end of the game. They haven't been winning pretty, but hey, this is not a beauty pageant contest. This is a football game we're talking about. It doesn't matter how you win. It doesn't matter how you lose. At the end of the day, you are what your record says you are. That's an old Colt Bill Parcells said, and that statement couldn't be more true for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though a lot of people want to say, oh, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've been getting outplayed in almost every single game. And I'm like, who cares? Who plays better at the end of the game? You want to talk about last 5 minutes of Kenny Pickett? That dude is usually clutch as heck. I know he wasn't clutch against the Cleveland Browns a week ago, but Kenny Pickett, if you can keep the game close and the clock is running down, they'll find a way to usually win more often than not. Kenny Pickett is not that good of a quarterback, but one thing you cannot take away about Kenny Pickett is that he's a clutch quarterback, and guess what? He's probably better than Mitchell Trubisky as well, because Mitchell Trubisky is the backup quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and anybody that says Mitchell Trubisky is better than Kenny Pickett, you're just not being honest, because Mitchell Trubisky is one of the worst quarterbacks that have ever played in the NFL. Mitchell Trubisky is not a good quarterback whatsoever. I mean, what Mike Tomlin is doing with the Pittsburgh Steelers is absolutely miraculous. How are you winning these games in a stacked AFC with one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL? We talk about the AFC being stacked year in and year out. We talk about all the great quarterbacks that reside in the AFC, but Mike Tomlin is doing this with Kenny Pickett, a quarterback most people would not even consider to be in the top 20. Kenny Pickett, by most people's standards, is a bottom 10 quarterback. Kenny Pickett, when I watch this guy, and this is for the old heads that watch the football games in the 2000s, Kenny Pickett reminds me a lot of Rex Grossman on the Chicago Bears, where he's not going to do a whole lot. He's not going to necessarily manage the game. He might sometimes make mistakes, and his offense is going to look ugly more often than not. But if the game is close and it's a low-scoring game, he's going to find a way to win, and that's what Rex Grossman was for the Chicago Bears in 2005 and 2006. I don't know if you guys remember that kind of football at the time, but I remember watching the highlights of it. I'm not going to say that I watched it live because I wasn't alive during that time, but I've looked at it because I'm a football historian, and I saw how the Chicago Bears were winning those games in the mid-2000s. Well, that's exactly what Kenny Pickett is doing. And Mike Tomlin is stealing the playbook from Lovie Smith, which is run the football, kill the clock, play good defense, make sure that when the defense is on the field for a long period of time, make sure that you force the opposing opponents to kick field goals, not score touchdowns, because when that happens, we usually can keep the game close and they find a way to win. And that's exactly the theme of the Pittsburgh Steelers season. Now, as far as the schedule of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got the Cardinals, you got the Patriots, you got the Colts, you got the Bengals, you got the Seahawks, you got the Ravens. I'm looking at that schedule right now. I'm thinking this is a team that should finish at least 11-6. But hey, there could be a classic trap game out there because there are a couple of games every year where Mike Tomlin and the Steelers lay an egg against a bad football team. Maybe it will even happen this week against the Cardinals. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. Do not rule that out. I would not be surprised if Mike Tomlin and the Steelers lose to a game like the Patriots, where the Patriots, yes, they've only had 2 wins this year, but Bill Belichick is still a good football coach, even though I know his record doesn't reflect that, and maybe the Steelers get caught in a trap game or something. Look at the Buffalo Bills. They ended up losing to Bill Belichick earlier this year, but everybody knows the Buffalo Bills are a better football team than the New England Patriots, and what I'm trying to say with Mike Tomlin is there are trap games that are possibly ahead. I don't think that too many of them are going to be on there, and I do think they're going to make the playoffs, but I'm kind of concerned about that because I know the Pittsburgh Steelers are usually due for a couple of stinkers a year. I remember the Pittsburgh Steelers earlier this year got blown out to the Houston Texans. Now, granted, the Houston Texans, they're a pretty good football team, but when you look at roster to roster, there is no way the Pittsburgh Steelers should have gotten blown out to the Houston Texans. But that's what happens when you're playing against a great quarterback in C.J. Stroud. Speaking of C.J. Stroud, they need to name the Rookie of the Year award after him because that dude is the greatest rookie quarterback to have ever existed on planet Earth. He might even be the greatest rookie ever. But when you talk about Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, I'm thinking about how he's overachieved with the roster that he has because the offensive line isn't great. The tight end's been hurt all year, and Pat Freeman moved. He finally got healthy, and they got the 2 receivers in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and they got the running game going with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris, even despite having a bad O-line. And Kenny Pickett, like I said, he's a bottom 10 quarterback, but you look at what they're doing on defense. You look at how Patrick Peterson's had a pretty good year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, he's allowing a lot of yards, but when you need Patrick Peterson to make a key play on defense, it's going to show up for you. And TJ Watt, of course, I got to go ahead and rave about him. TJ Watt has been a difference maker for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. He has been the team's real MVP because TJ Watt has been making plays all over the field. He's been sacking the quarterback, he's been forcing fumbles, he's been making quarterback hits like no other. TJ Watt has been carrying the Pittsburgh Steelers big time, and without TJ Watt, the Pittsburgh Steelers would not be 7-4. And even though they only won 16-10 yesterday against the Cincinnati Bengals, who by the way were on their backup quarterback in Jake Brown, I gotta still give credit to the Pittsburgh Steelers because they went out there and beat a divisional opponent in a game they knew they had to have in order to keep pace with the playoff run. And you look at them now. Now they're the 5th seed in the AFC. Now they're going to go ahead and make some noise in the AFC. Are they going to win a playoff game this year? I doubt it. But I think the Pittsburgh Steelers could overachieve for sure. And I don't think a lot of people had the Pittsburgh Steelers making the playoffs before the season started. I was one of the rare people that had the Steelers making the playoffs before the season started. I got some pushback from some of my friends. I said Pittsburgh Steelers, they can go ahead, go 9-8, make the NFL playoffs as a wild card team. I know some people were like, whoa, how they going to make it in a stacked AFC? Don't you got the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Jaguars, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, I said it doesn't matter because Mike Tomlin finds a way to not get a losing season because that's the kind of coach Mike Tomlin is. And you look at their defense, they got a good defense, they got a good running game, and they got 2 good receivers. Yes, their quarterback isn't good, and they're a quarterback away from legitimate contention in the AFC, but it's not like Kenny Pickett is the worst quarterback in the world. And hey, at least Kenny Pickett is a clutch quarterback when it matters most, more often than not, even though he's not a good quarterback in general. He might suck at the game of football the first 55 minutes of the game, but if you can wind the game to under 5 minutes, he's usually going to come through because Kenny Pickett in the last 5 minutes looks like a completely different player from the first 55 minutes of Kenny Pickett. It's kind of Tim Tebow-esque in that sense where Tim Tebow sucked for the Denver Broncos for the first 55 minutes of a game, and then he would show up in the final 5 minutes of a game. I'm not saying Kenny Pickett is Tim Tebow, but I'm saying it's Tebow-esque in terms of the way how he struggles for most of the game, but he relies on a great defense, and then he comes through clutch at the end of the game. That's the kind of player Kenny Pickett is. That's why I'm trying to let you guys know about that, and Mike Tomlin deserves a ton of credit for the success of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ultimately, what Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing is committing to the impossible. They're managing to win games with horrible quarterback play, and that is virtually unheard of in today's NFL, especially in a stacked AFC. But Mike Tomlin has found a way to keep the Steelers competitive, even though they got a draft bust at the quarterback position, and it looks like Mike Tomlin is going to avoid a losing season for the 17th consecutive season. So congrats to Mike Tomlin for that. So that's why Mike Tomlin will take the Steelers to the NFL playoffs this season, as he is on pace to avoid a losing season for the 17th consecutive season in the NFL. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the Dustin Tran Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at Dustin Tran and at Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter at Dustin Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, Check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.